flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to agenda item number 3, presentations and discussions, and I'll call on Dr. Wilson.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, we have been struggling to get the presentation put together simply because there's so much going on in the organization, from the virtual expos that we had over a 2-week period of time to, as you're aware, planning the completion ceremony next week, which we'll touch on. But Cece and her department have done a nice job pulling together information that describes the work that they've done over the past 12 months and all the benefits that we've received from that work. And so I'm going to turn it over to Cece and talk to you about our public relations and our marketing. Cece.
Whoops. Whoops. Let me push this back a little. Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Wilson, tonight I'd like to give an overview on the Public Relations and Marketing Department. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do overall, and then we're going to dive more deeply into social media because I know some of you have had questions about that. So over here to my left is Patrick Jervis. He's our branding and social media manager, and so any social media questions I can't answer, I'm sure he will be able to answer. And so here we go. What do we do? Well, we do public information and communications, media relations and advertising. We're responsible for EVIT materials and publications, website management, social media, campus events and tours, recruitment, and we also do surveys. We tell the EVIT story. We do that through writing, design, photography, video, audio. We do it virtually, we do it in person. This year has been an interesting one for us because of COVID-19 and the safety protocols that meant we couldn't have visitors on campus. That meant we couldn't have campus tours. It meant we couldn't have the campus events that typically attract media coverage, like our big EVIT Expo. A few schools allowed our EVIT recruiters to come on campus to talk to students. So to deal with all that, we had to improvise. So we created over 40 student testimonial virtual tour videos that give you kind of a tour of the program, and the students in the videos are ambassadors of that program who would be talking to you if you were here taking the tour. Whenever media wanted to do a story about EVIT, we supplied them with the photos, whatever video footage they wanted, and we coordinated Zoom interviews. Dr. Wilson has become a pro at the Zoom media interview. In fact, I will tell you they love interviewing him. So that's something good that came from all that. And then because we couldn't have our expo, we did a virtual expo, but because it was so big, we had to do it over 6 nights for about 2 hours. So we did that. In the meantime, our EVIT recruiters conducted 148 Q&As, meetings with counselors, and presentations to students, most of them virtually. Okay. While all that's going on, we were still doing some of the things we normally do, such as the superintendent's update newsletter, which I send it to you guys every month. This goes out to local and state stakeholders of EVIT, so it goes to all of the governing boards in the East Valley. It goes to all of the superintendents, the CTE directors. It goes to legislators, to elected city officials. I think there's about 300 people on that distribution list. We were also responsible for drafting and designing the Reopening EVIT and Returning to Hands-on Learning Safety Protocols Manual. And that kicks off what I would like to talk about a little bit, about one of our initiatives that it didn't start out as being something we planned to do, but we discovered it was working so well, we're going to do a whole lot more of it. So since March of last year, when we were all working from home because they shut down the campuses, I've drafted nearly 50 letters on behalf of the superintendent's office that have gone out to parents, to students. And we did this when we started it. It was to keep everybody engaged because everybody was out there virtually. But parents responded. so positively to it that we just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And Dr. Wilson, through these letters, it's like he just kind of joined hands with the parents all the way down to the reopening of the campus. So when we reopened in August, we didn't have, and probably if you worked here before, you remember this, we didn't have this big drop-off where there's hundreds of kids that registered that aren't here. We had, I think, even more than we thought were going to be here. And it was because we stayed in touch with the parents. And this is something we want to keep doing. And I remember when I was a newspaper reporter, I was told by a lot of school districts that, oh, parents, they're involved when the kids are little. But when they get older, they're not as involved. Well, after this experience, I don't believe that's true. They're not engaged. When you engage them, they're involved. And that's what I think Dr. Wilson discovered. And frankly, I've been here since 2013. I've never seen this much parent communication go on from EVIT, and certainly not from the superintendent's office. We always put in the letter that he's open to talking to them anytime. We give them his contact information. So that has just been an incredibly valuable thing, and we plan to keep doing it. An outgrowth of that is I created a new EVIT News Parents Can Use monthly newsletter. This includes things that help them how to get the most out of their child's CTE education. So like I gave tips in one of them for if your student is going to go into the workforce, how can you be helping them at home to get ready for that? So we're going to continue to do that. This year we did more surveys than we've ever done before. But I think this is a good thing because we got input from people before making decisions. So we were surveying parents, we were surveying students, staff. We even surveyed the high school counselors. I think the parents might be a little sick of our surveys by now, but that provided valuable input. And then just a couple things I'd like to highlight from those surveys. The parent marketing survey, 99% said they would recommend EVIT to other families. And on the student marketing survey, 97% said they'd recommend EVIT to a friend. That is huge. So, go ahead. We also conducted a successful Best of Mesa campaign for the Tribune. We don't normally campaign for this, but we decided to campaign this year. So we asked parents and students, vote for us. And so EVIT won Best Public School, Best Place to Work. Dr. Wilson was named Best Education Leader. And the thing I'm happiest about is our EVIT teachers swept the high school teacher category, with Mr. Perez taking first place. EVIT has been featured about 20 times this school year in local newspapers, television, and radio. And we have 3 more stories coming up here in the next few weeks. We've also been producing what's called branded content. You've probably seen these articles. I write them about successful EVIT alumni. They run in the Arizona Republic, on azcentral.com, and East Valley Mom's blog has also been running them on their blog and social media. I discovered recently from the folks at AZ Central that our branded content is outperforming other local branded content on AZ Central. So one of our stories that we did was about an aesthetics alum, Becca Hassan. Her story on AZ Central had 3,971 page views for a month. The average page views for all other local branded content is 1,000 to 2,000. Her story had, where are we at? Oh, let me explain. Page views is the total number of times the content was viewed for a month. That story had 3,630 unique visitors. The average unique visitors for all other local branded content is 750. The engagement rate, which basically means how long they stay on the article and read it, was 87%. For other local content, it's 75%. Okay. Some other things, we redesigned the EVIT website, the homepage and the navigation. We created 47 videos for the EVIT website and social media. We talked about this a little bit, the testimonial virtual tour videos, and I'd like to show you one of those. I think you'll see after this why we like having the students be the ambassadors who talk to visitors who come to EVIT.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Bodwin. I am in the aviation program at EVIT and I'm a second year student. So in the first year of aviation at EVIT, we're gonna do a lot of ground school. So you go over weather, you go over engines, you go over how lift works, you understand the airplane, and you even get to take apart and put together a whole engine. One of the best things that we did was when we had a whole mock airport and little mini airplanes where we'd go around practicing the radio calls, so that one was really fun. So as a second year aviation student, first semester you're gonna be doing your written exam, which is the first part of getting your private pilot. The second part is gonna be your oral exam, and the third part is your check ride. Those are gonna be completed second semester during your flight training. Basically what we do is that once you pass your written exam, second semester, you're able to go off, you just check in once a week and bring your logbook so that you know how many hours you've been flying. And then by the time you're done with high school, the end of the school year, you've got your private pilot license. So right now I'm doing my flight training through Aviation Explorers at Falcon Field, and
Turn down the volume.
so half the day, instead of going to school, I'm going to the airport to fly. Basically, most of the days we come in, we got warm-ups going on, and then once we're done with warm-ups, we go straight into whatever we're doing. Either it's a project, it's a PowerPoint, notes, whatever we're learning for that day or that week, we're gonna be hitting it hard. We're gonna be going through and making sure that everybody understands each part of it. We're gonna be trying to stay on track with everything, get the quizzes done, make sure that you're learning it. We have flight simulators on the computer in the lab over here. And so that's awesome because what that does is it gives you another step ahead to learn how to fly a plane before you can actually go out and do it. Because that is expensive. We know that aviation is an expensive career choice in the beginning, and then it pays off in the end. But it is absolutely so fun. So you get to do the simulators and learn how to fly in the chair in a computer when you're not able to go out. As a high school student, you get the opportunity for college credit through dual enrollment with the classes that you take at EVIT. So being a pilot is not the only thing that you're gonna be going towards in the aviation program. We've learned about drones, we've learned about helicopters, we've learned about air traffic control. There's a ton of different options when you're going through the aviation program. It's not just becoming a pilot. You can do maintenance, you can do all these other things. There's a ton of options on what to do. And this program helps you learn about each one of those aspects. The whole class is basically like one giant family. It's been awesome. And it's even crazier to me because last year I was the only girl in my program. Everyone else out of the 30 kids was a guy, but they were all really welcoming and that was awesome to see. If you want to be a pilot, this is probably the best, fastest way to do it. Learning your ground school is probably the hardest part in aviation. Flying is not the hard part. It's learning all the information that you need to know. So being here and getting that extra step ahead of knowing all this stuff, they teach you practically everything that you could possibly need to know. And it's amazing that they kind of take the time to do it instead of kind of throwing you out there when you're trying to learn and fly at the same time. You have the opportunity to start here. You don't have to have previous knowledge or anything like that. You just have to have that ambition to do it. I've had a great experience at EVIT. My instructors have been amazing. They're constantly there to help you. I've stayed after school every day for a week and they're always there. They're always willing to help. And it's amazing because if you want to succeed, and having people there to help you is just amazing. It makes you really, really want to push yourself. It's been awesome, actually. I'm not saying that, just for an interview. No, it's been amazing. I've loved it both years. I've had great instructors, all of them. I've had 3 so far, and they've all just been right there for you. There's a lot of information you're gonna be learning, and it may get hard sometimes, but trust me, it'll be completely worth it in the end. It is absolutely amazing. Once you learn this stuff, it's easy. It's right there. If you're thinking about this program, if you've gone up and experienced flight, if you want to experience flight or anything of that aspect, go for it. You can do it. There is nothing holding you back, nothing stopping you except for yourself. So go out and do it, and it will be so rewarding in the end.
So now we all want to join aviation. Um, and I think you could tell from that video, that was not scripted. That was from her heart, which I love the best about these videos. They're just wonderful. They're all on the EVIT website. I'd encourage you to look at them. There's one for collision repair where you wouldn't think a video about collision repair could make you tear up. But this student talking about what that has meant to him will make you tear up. So I encourage you to look at those. We've used these videos on our 6 virtual EVIT Expo nights. For those nights, we had approximately 1,300 participants. Now, some of those numbers are duplicated because some students and their parents signed up for more than one night. And we didn't have a way of figuring out easily how many were unique. But we had a good turnout. We answered anywhere from 90 to 200 questions a night. Those were all recorded, and they're all available for people to look at on our website and on YouTube, where they've now had nearly 700 views. Okay. Let's see. Well, while he's figuring that out, the one thing I forgot to put on here under highlights, how I could forget is beyond me, is the completion ceremonies. So our department is also responsible for doing those, and we're busy planning for 2 of them next week. I think they're going to be awesome, and we're looking forward to people being there to see the students. This is such a great accomplishment for them. Okay, now social media. So to kind of give you an overview, how do we use social media? We use it to build brand awareness, to promote EVIT's reputation and engage the community, to encourage enrollment, to show day-to-day activities in our programs, to promote EVIT events. We live stream EVIT events. We communicate with students and parents, and we provide customer support by answering questions on posts and in messages. We get a lot of direct messages on social media from students. For example, they've applied, they haven't heard yet from registration, they want to know where their application is. That's a common one. All right, before we go any further, I have to give you some definitions so you understand what we're talking about. When social media is measured, these are the terms that are used. A follower is someone who subscribes to a social media account to receive updates or to see posts in their news feed. A post could be text, it might be video, it might be a photo, might be a link to another story. Impressions are the number of times your post is displayed on someone's feed or when they visit your post or the post on your page. Engagement is comments, likes, and shares of posts. And when the engagement rate is determined, they take the engagements or interactions divided by the number of followers. For the numbers you're about to see, these were calculated by a service called Sprout Social. It's a service we subscribe to. They look at our social media and figure out where we are. So over all of EVIT's social media networks, we have over 29,000 followers. We had them do this report between November 1st and we gave April 16th because we didn't know for sure when we were doing this report here. November 1st, the reason we started it there is that's when registration started. That's when our online application went live. So during that time, we've had on our social media posts over 2.7 million impressions. Now again, that sounds huge, but that's like if you have your phone and you're going like this, and you go right by us, that counts. That's why that number gets so high. Engagements, we've had over 55,000, according to this report. The engagement rate is 2.0%, and we've had over 41,000 video views. Again, that's if you're going like this, EVIT video comes on, starts playing, that gets counted in those video views. Okay. Looking at Facebook. First of all, we post on different platforms because they all have different types of audiences. The audience on Facebook for us is mainly parents and young adults. We have over 15,000 followers on Facebook. When I started here in 2013, I think that we didn't even have 5,000 yet. And Patrick has worked very hard to get that up to over 15,000. In the time frame that we looked at, we had 188 Facebook posts, over 2.3 million impressions, over 34,000 engagements, for a 1.5 engagement rate, which I saw that and said, well, that's a horrible rate. I mean, look, we had 1 million impressions. But the average Facebook engagement rate is less than 1%. Again, I think it's because they're calculating this. The video views on Facebook were over 24,000. Instagram is where our high school students and young parents are. We have over 3,800 followers. We had 320 posts, 427,000 impressions, 18,000 engagements, and a 4.4% engagement rate. The average Instagram rate is 1.22%, and we had over 6,000 video views. Instagram is huge with our students. They are on there all the time, and when we survey them, Instagram is their #1 platform. Okay. We're also on LinkedIn, and so is Mr. Fleetham. I have to give him a shout out because he's so good on LinkedIn about sharing our posts, and I really appreciate that. But the audience on LinkedIn is business and industry, EVIT alumni. This is often where I find alumni to write about, and community members. We have over 5,000 followers. We've had 204 published posts during this time frame, 30,000 impressions, 2,000 engagements for an engagement rate of 7.1%. And the average LinkedIn engagement rate is less than 1%. We're also on YouTube. So this is where high school students and young adults are, although when we survey our students, YouTube is down on the list. They're not as much on YouTube. They're on Instagram first, then Snapchat, then TikTok, I think it's called. That's where they are. They're not as much on YouTube as they used to be. We have over 600 followers. We've had 79 videos published on there during this time period, 141,000 impressions, 440 engagements, over 63% engagement rate, and their rate is 4%. And the video views are over 11,000. We're also on Twitter. Now, Twitter, we're not on Twitter because we think we're going to recruit students on Twitter. Twitter is where you kind of need to be in the political universe. This is where your elected leaders are, educators, business owners. So if you want those groups to see what you're doing and how you're doing it, you want to be on Twitter. So we have over 2,900 followers, 426 published posts, over 9,000 impressions, 81 engagements. The engagement rate is only 0.8%, but the average rate for Twitter is 0.02%. Again, I think it's because of this. I do it all the time. I'm on Twitter and I'm just kind of cruising by like this. All right, so you might be wondering how this compares to anybody else. The only place I could find where I could get that information is Facebook. On Facebook, they provide us on our administrative page how our page compares to other local pages. Compared to Mesa Community College, Mesa Public Schools, Gateway Community College, Chandler, Primavera, and Westmeck, we have more likes. That was the only comparative thing I could find. Patrick, is there anything you want to add? No?
Follow us.
Yes. Please follow us. Please engage with us. Every little bit helps. But does anyone have questions?
I don't have a question. Well, I do. What do you do in your spare time? What time? Very well done.
It's very pathetic, actually. In my spare time, I'm often going like this on my phone to see what's happening on EVIT social media. So.
Very well done.
I do have a question. I wanted to make sure my microphone was on, so our chairman can. We in my agency we use Drupal for our website, and then we use Google Analytics for all of our metrics. Now, I'm not talking about social media, I'm just talking about our website. What are we using for our website to measure impressions, bounce rate, click-throughs, all of those type of things?
We're using Google Analytics.
Okay. And
I didn't include that in here because I knew that would be a whole nother long thing.
so maybe one of these times you can, I'll
Yes.
just give you a call and just check on that, or if that's something that we can share with
Absolutely.
everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Are there any other questions?
I'm getting the look, so I'm just going to be brief. So-
Rhonda, you know you want to ask a question.
Well, of course. I'm getting the look of, is she going to go there? And I'm going to go there. So one of my concerns, and I've said this before, and Patrick will know this as well, is I don't think we're doing a good job in engaging with our sending districts. And one of the things that we used to do, and I understand we couldn't do it because of COVID, so I want us to all take our COVID brains off. I think we've done a fabulous job marketing and social media during COVID. There's not much more we could do. However, our outreach to our sending schools, as far as sending students over to speak to those schools, lunchtime activities that we used to do, is like obsolete. Like, it's just not even happening anymore. And so that's where part of my concern is we're not reaching out to those sending school districts and really having a presence on their campus. They don't always have our materials to hand out. We are not engaging with them the way, in my opinion, that we should, or at the level that we should. And even during COVID, I think we missed some opportunities because there were sporting events going on that were still running. And normally, we would be at those sporting events announcing them, and we didn't do it. So that's how we get seen, that's how people know EVIT exists, and that's just my personal experience, is I've seen us drop away from really communicating and participating with our sending districts with those lunchtime activities that we used to do. And I think that's a sad thing, that maybe we need to look at how we're marketing, because a lot of parents still don't know we exist.
I absolutely agree with you, and we do need to be back on those campuses again, and in all those different ways. So absolutely, moving forward, we need to do that. Are there other questions? Mr. Lane? No? Okay.
Cece, I know it took quite a bit of time to pull all this together on top of the other things that we're working through right now, so I appreciate you and your department doing that tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting on April 26th.
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote then.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Cleedum,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That brings us to agenda item number 5, call to the public. Dr. Wilson, do we have anything there?
We do not, Mr. Watkins.
Oh, that brings us to agenda item 6. We'll consider all the consent agenda items as one motion with one vote unless there are any objections. Are there any objections? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda items A through I inclusive.
This is Doolin. I'll second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Cleedum,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Did I not hear my name?
Oh, gosh. You didn't.
The audio is acting up.
I
don't know
am
whether you-
so sorry. How did I forget our presidents? All right, Mr. Watkins.
Aye. Motion carried. Carried. That brings us to agenda item 7, Personnel. Do I have a motion?
I'll move we approve the personnel presentation as indicated in the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
I have a question, or actually a statement. I think we're very fortunate that we can do all this, give extra summer assignments, because I can remember when I was teaching a long time ago, that we did that on our own time without pay, so they're pretty lucky.
I have a question. I think it was under the qualifications for the jobs. There was a statement that they had to have proof for immunizations for rubella and I think it was mumps. Should we not have one also for COVID-19, or is that necessary?
Who are you asking?
Dr. Wilson?
So I think that's a topic that we can bring back at our next agenda meeting, and the governing board can have the discussion. I know that there's varying opinions. If you ask my opinion, I don't believe it's necessary, but I don't make the policies, I just enforce them. So I would ask that if that's a topic of discussion, we can bring it back in June to see if that's something that the board wants to entertain.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item number 8, information discussion item.
I think you have
I'll turn it
to,
over
yeah, I think, Mr. Watkins, you have to do a vote on the
Oh, I
personnel.
thought we
That was-
did.
You did the first and the second.
We
I
have a
believe.
motion and a second, didn't we?
Yes.
We did.
Okay. Was there any more discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the vote.
Watkins,
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Fleetum,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now, item 8, information and discussion. And I'll ask Dr. Wilson to lead us in A, B, and C.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the governing board. Item A is an update on the Power Campus expansion, specifically completing the third floor shell space and in the aviation building. We had discussed several meetings ago in our update from Joey, I believe, on where we were at with the Power Campus expansion, the desire potentially and the need to build out that shell space. If you remember correctly, that we have on the third floor of the aviation, we were going to leave it just as kind of shelled space, and we said that there's beginning to be a concern that it may be more advantageous for us to build that out now versus coming back 6, 12, 18 months from now to build that out. The rationale behind it is twofold. Really, one is our belief that we're going to need that space sooner rather than later. When we look at our growth expectations, the largest growth, not just for EVIT enrollment, but just in general in our CTED is that southeast sector, the Queen Creek, the Santan. So the need to make sure that we have space available to accommodate just the growing communities is going to be a reality for us. And secondarily, the concern that it would be more prudent financially to build out the third floor space now than decide 6, 12, 18 months later that we wanted to bring a company back out or do it internally. So we're still moving towards that, and we expect to come to you with a recommendation. I know Neil and Don are working on the blueprints, and I know that McCarthy is working on once those are done, the cost of the actual hard cost. But it's looking that it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $650,000 to $700,000 to build that third floor out, which is consistent with the cost roughly of the second floor. So that's just an update. Our hope is to come back to you in June, and you're going to see a lot of McCarthy and a lot of our architects in June and July to come back with to seek the build out of the third shell space, as well as GMP 2.3. So it's not an action item. I just wanted to update you on where we're at with that. If you have questions or concerns on the shell space, I'd be happy to answer them.
So how much do you expect material costs to go up in the next 30, 60, 90 days?
And there's
We're
Brett.
hoping they're going to skydive down.
Ask the construction guy to ask that,
So
right?
that's a very good question. When we talk about escalation as a whole, we typically separate it into two categories.
There's one that's kind of the natural escalation cost of living increases that's anywhere from 2 to 5% a year. You know, that can fluctuate, again, 2 on the low side, 5 on the high side, but over the last 20 years, it averages right around 3. So that's kind of where we started as a baseline is 3%, but there's 2 commodities right now that are in the news and you know, very changing frequently, steel and wood. And so luckily on this project, there's not a ton of wood involved as it's commercial construction. There's select wood and finishes. So I won't dive into that one in a ton of detail. That change is stemming from tariffs over the last 2 years and some Canadian trends. But steel is a big one that's on our radar. Cost is a big focus, but also lead time and availability. You know, steel joists are very common on projects like this, and our good friends at Amazon placed a very large national order that's filled the capacity for almost a whole year. So things that usually take, you know, 3 to 6 months to get now take 10 to 11 months. And so luckily we've been able to kind of strategize our approach to those things. So we have a good plan in place to mitigate some of those impacts, but in general, we're tracking right now anywhere from that 5 to 5.5% overall project escalation from year to year. And so that's a forecast. We hope that some of these trends with commodities kind of spike off towards the end of the year, but it's really a crystal ball. It all depends on what happens politically and the rest of the environment.
So petroleum for plastic products and things like that, copper shortage is massive. You know, there's no copper, and that affects a lot of different things.
Correct.
The motors on your vehicles.
Correct.
A variety of different things. So that's why it's the traditional numbers that we look at are almost a moot point. It's like a starting point. That's the baseline. It's the 5%. That's all. I'm not trying to pin you down. It's something that we really have to think about. You know, even though it's not a lot of lumber. Lumber cost has been what in the last 12 months? What 250% about?
Yeah,
plus
I mean,
250. Then you have containers that you can't bring material up from South America to build cardboard boxes to ship their material in. So that's what they pay you the big bucks for, to figure that out. But I want us to all be aware of that's really some big stuff that you guys are. It's a big lift for anybody in the industry. So.
And that's honestly part of the rationale behind wanting to do the third floor now versus waiting 6, 12, 18 months. And so we'll come back again in June with firm numbers and firm design on the third floor. I just wanted to update you on where we were at with that. The second item B, is Power Campus Expansion, GMP 2.3, the Veterinary Science Building. Some of you on the board weren't here when we began the whole project, right? So I'm going to do a quick review. Real quick. So we started with the garage, which was 2.1. It was approved. That's done. We then came back to you for GMP 2.2, which is going to be the aviation building, which we are in the process of completing now. That's expected to be done by the time second semester of next year starts, so January 2022. January 2022. In the midst of that, though, we came back and said that we had some issues with our facilities plant, and so we came back and talked about re-engineering the facilities plant so that we'd have the ability to have enough of a load and enough of redundancy to capture the growth that we expect out there with the new facilities. And now we're in a position where that work in the facility plant is going to be done this summer. We're expecting GMP 2.2 to be done by January of next year, which only leaves in the GMP 2.3, which was the Veterinary Science Building, as well as the remodeling of space to expand our Cosmo services, as well as some of our health sciences. So I've asked Neil and Don and McCarthy to come, and like I told you, they're going to be here this meeting, next meeting, and then the final meeting in June to, again, begin walking us through the Vet Science Building, as well as the remodels for cosmetology and health. We're not going to do a deep dive tonight, but they're going to come back next time, because I know when we were here on veterinary sciences, 2 years ago or 18 months ago or whatever it was, there were some legitimate questions and concerns that were raised that they've been working to address. And so we'll do a short dive tonight, then a deeper dive in the next couple meetings, trending towards the goal of having GMP 2.3 to you at the end of June, so we can stay on track of having the complete a project done by all of it by the time we start school year 23-24, 22-23, 22-23. So Neil, there we go.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Mr. President, members of the board, I know if I ever am sick, I'm sure Dr. Wilson can fill in just fine for us, so he knows this through and through pretty well. So yeah, he asked us to do a shallow dive, not a deep dive. I'm clarifying that, okay? So we're just doing a real quick look at the master plan, freshen up on exactly what we're looking at. So we talked about building 11, which is the aviation upper midpoint of that campus there. Then the parking garage was done over the summer, which is the 8 down there in the lower midpoint as well. And now we're going to take a look at 13 and 14, which is what we're calling the Vet Assist and Aviation building. And then the associated site work around that. 15 is the active core. And then if you look at it, 20, 21, those are future buildings that would be a future phase not included in this 2.3 campus GMP coming up. And then also included in this 2.3 GMP coming up would be a remodel of building number 4, which is currently where the admin and the main lobby is. If you've been to the campus, it's where the large atrium is, 3-story in the middle. So that is looking to turn into a cosmetology. So we're going to take a look at the Vet Assist and the engineering. Part of the campus improvement right now is an active core. The Paseo is a continuation of the east side of the aviation building, which continues south between the parking garage and the Vet Assist. That is the connection to future ASU developments out there that they've asked us to include in the design. They've also asked us to develop an active core, which will also support EVIT in its outdoor learning environment, and also just gathering spaces on the evening and the weekends and at other times of the campus. It is set up with an amphitheater, so you can do outdoor teaching environments with a teacher out there and some concrete benches. We'll show you some pictures of that. And is immediately adjacent to the parking garage, so both the parking garage services the existing campus and also this new building. The new building is a 2-story building. It has a bridge or a breezeway between the two. Engineering is on the first floor on the north side, and the Vet Assist encompasses both levels on the ground floor and upper floor as well. We are also adding additional trash over here because the existing trash is up on the northwest corner. You can see the land that's going to be for future development there, and also a future east road that will connect the two turnarounds that you see on the drawing. We're looking to add just over about 43,000 square feet over there with this development, as well as a bus drop-off. If you're familiar with the flow right now, on the west side of the parking garage, on that little red kind of orange pavement areas where the buses kind of load and unload right now, we're allowing them to move out of there, be more efficient to a bus drop-off on the north side of the engineering. Then they'd head east, do a turnaround in that roundabout, and they'd head back out to the north to the light. Also part of this Vet Assist is a dog outdoor play area. This kind of gives you a 3D image. You can see the buses there on the left. You can see that active core as you kind of come into that central area. You can see the parking garage over on the right. The Paseo is kind of the dashed colored concrete as it pulls you through, and you can see the north entry, student entry into the Vet Assist, the 2-story building. Where that screen wall's in the middle is that covered breezeway that kind of connects the two. This is kind of just gives you a full width of it. This is kind of looking northbound where the Paseo would continue down. And kind of there's that outdoor dog area. Has some shade out there as well as some just artificial synthetic turf for them to play on. Eventually there could be a 3-story building over there on that upper right-hand corner where that future development come in the future phases, and the potential road development as well, you can see in gray there. This is at ground level, walking through the courtyard, taking you up to the 2-story concept in that middle breezeway. Once you go up those stairs, you can either go to the left or right. Vet Assist would be on both sides on the upper level. Engineering is over on the left on the bottom there. There's actually outdoor yard space for wood shop and also metals that you can kind of see through that screened fence area. This shows you a ground level of the Vet Assist is on the left-hand side, engineering is on the right-hand side. So again, on the first ground level, engineering only exists on the ground. Upstairs, the whole building is Vet Assist. The student entry is that north area through that active core. The public entry would be on that south end of the garage. They could park and then walk up and bring their animal in. There's 2 treatment areas right down there where it says public entry with a check-in reception area. And then you have the surgery, you have the kennel areas, you have some indoor dog run areas, all servicing the vet assist side, as well as a lobby area for the students to gather. And then the engineering, you pop across the breezeway. All the light cyan colors are educational spaces. You have a metals lab, you have a wood shop, a chem lab, a clean room, and then you have some general engineering classrooms, as well as a gallery space or a debrief space. All in all, it's about just over 20,000 square feet on the lower level. Then we jumped up to the upper level. The whole building is vet assist on the upper level. All the purple is, dark purple is education classrooms with shared prep areas in between. They do have some kennels in there as well for animal holding. And then there's a covered breezeway between them. And there's 2 stairs. Future development would be that 3-story building. You could actually tie into the covered breezeway and connect to the future building in the future if need be. You can see there's a little bit more square footage on the second floor because of overhangs, creating shade on the lower levels, and a total of about just over 42,500 square feet. That's just another shot at a lower level walking from the south end. I'm going to jump over into cosmetology. Cosmetology, we're going to jump over to building number 4. So that is the existing building just left of that main roundabout where the tree is in the middle there. That is a 3-story building. We are going to look. So lower level, public entry. We are now currently have, you have aviation, you have engineering, and you have some cosmetology and some medical currently in this building. Idea is to disperse that out once you take over aviation come January 1. And then eventually, once you take over Vet Assist, those can move out as well. So these improvements are really scheduled probably start of the 2022 school year, once aviation moves out, and we can kind of coordinate that with schedules. The whole floor, if you look in the lower left down there, is the aesthetics lab and the aesthetics classroom. This program follows your current main campus program. It's a tad bit smaller, not much, but it kind of meets all the current spaces you have over there. So there's an aesthetics classroom, aesthetics lab, where they can actually have some hands-on learning plus the classroom learning. They have aesthetics 101 and aesthetics 102 that can take place here. On the right-hand side, you see the studio or the salon. So that's actually the public space where if you make an appointment, you'd come in the lobby, the entrance, and then you'd actually be seen by a stylist, and the studio and the salon. Then there's a wash and dry on the far up right corner. And then there's another aesthetics classroom there as well. There is a large supply storage area in the gray in the over left, and we're adding commercial grade washers and dryers, similar to what you have to the main campus, to meet this, the needs of the current facility as it changes. As you go up, you now have classrooms or studios. There are 5 classroom studios on this level. Currently you have 2 in the lower left-hand corner in the salon. We're going to improve those and add 3 more. There's a theory class in the upper right kind of square shop shaped classroom, which is the glass box right now. So as you start to get vertical, the public drops off, they stay in the lower level, and the classrooms and the students stay up on the second and third level. On the third level is the same concept as the second, and the 2 classrooms of theory in the upstairs, and then there's also student commons in the dark purple that is supported by the rooftop garden that currently exists over there. In the classrooms, there is some hair bowls for washing, and then they also have mirrors and mannequin heads there for doing the styling. One note to have, we are looking to improve the second floor. The right-hand side of the classrooms over there, we're trying to do over the summer to get some of that space taken care of when the students come back here in August, so that that program can actually move over and function on the second level at full capacity. Any questions? And the last thing, I just give you a couple images so you can kind of see the cosmetology as that further develops. And then next steps, we are moving in this meeting with ASU for design and permitting, and then we are going to come back for a deep dive June 14th, and then we are looking to do a GMP review and approval on the June 28th board meeting.
So the intent of tonight was just to give you kind of an overview update on where we're at within our expansion, the actual project out there. One of the things that I'm excited about, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, is that by doing some of the reconfiguring of space and expanding space, I hope to be able to be in a spot where sooner rather than later we can begin exploring adult education out at the Power Campus as well. And so, we know that we have a good number of students that come here, both high school and adult, in cosmetology, that live out in the southeast corner of the CTED. And yet we only offer a certain amount of seats at the Power Campus and no adult education at the Power Campus. Same thing with health. And so not only are we buying more space for our vet programming, for our aviation, for our engineering, but the remodeling will give us more opportunity to provide space or programming for our health sciences as well as our cosmetology. So they're going to come back again and go a deeper dive so you guys can take a look at the actual plans with the cost estimates so that we can be in a position to seek a GMP 2.3 approval by the end of June. One thing I will say too, and this is down the road, but I think that we've done a good job trying to expand and take into account programming that currently exists as well as expanding programming that currently exists. What we have not done a good enough job, in my opinion, is providing industrial trade opportunities for that section of our CTED. And so, not tonight, but at some point in time in the near future, I think it's worth a discussion about when we're done with the expansion of our veterinary sciences, does it make sense to begin looking at adding a third building there that would be industrial trades so that we could potentially have all of the programming that we're offering here offered there as well to accommodate the needs of the growing section of the CTED, but that's a later conversation. So we'll come back, they'll come back in the 14th to go deeper on all of that, on the vet assistant, the engineering, and any questions that you might have in the cosmetology or the health sciences that we're going to be renovating. But if you have any general questions tonight, they'd be happy to answer them for you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate the time. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, item C, organizational structure. So I'm going to go on, do my superintendent thing right now. So, one of the commitments I've made to the organization is that we will grow. Not only just enrollment grow, which matters, but we will grow in the output of quality that we're delivering. And I think in the past 18 months, we've done a lot of different things that have designed to help facilitate that, and I think the governing board has done an amazing job helping to build that capacity, whether it be looking at our onboarding, whether it be looking at our salary schedule, our contracts. Kevin has gone through our policies. We went through and adopted a new evaluation instrument. We have been constantly looking for ways that we could position ourselves organizationally to be able to grow. Again, not only in number, but also in output. Next year, I suspect between high school and adult, we'll hover right around 53 to 5,500, which is better than we've ever been. But our facilities should be servicing 8,000 learners, not 53 or 5,500. And so the question I always get stuck on is how do we need to position ourselves organizationally to be able to grow, not only numbers, but also in output. And so what I am presenting to the governing board tonight is an organizational chart that I would hope to be able to grow into by the start of school year 22-23. So not next year, but the year after. Although it has to start next year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But this is an organizational chart that in some ways isn't that much different than what you would see, but in other ways is significantly different, especially for us. One of the things that I have always struggled with in my time here is that we as an organization are almost two different organizations, almost two different companies, two different businesses, adult education and high school education. And we operationalize the system in many ways like we are two different entities. And what I believe happens is that in doing it that way, we are not maximizing our efficiencies, nor are we maximizing our effectiveness, because we wind up having duplication of services in some cases, or mixed messaging of similar services in other cases, or systems that should be the same but aren't because one's on the adult and one's on the high school side. And if we're going to become who I expect us to be, if we're going to grow not only in numbers but also in outcomes, we can't be running two different businesses. We've got to run one organization that services all learners, high school and adult, under one umbrella. And so what my proposal is that we shift to having an organizational structure that says, no matter what your role and responsibility is in the organization, you are servicing both high school and adult. There's no more divided services. There's no more divided houses. We are a unified district that services all learners. And to a degree, we have that a little bit right now in our business offices, right? I mean, our HR, when we post positions, that HR individual posts for both high school and adult, and our payroll pays both high school and adult. There's some more that needs to be in there that would bring us in alignment, but that's kind of the closest we have in the organization. Technology, Carlos is the same, that, you know, if a classroom needs technology, he doesn't check and see if it's high school or adult. We service whoever's there. That's what the biggest barrier, in my opinion, to us being able to become who I expect us to be is in the area of academics and operations. Because what we wind up having is an academic office that services high school, and then a different academic office that services adult, and those two don't necessarily always talk or always connect. And so we have, as an example, I shared this graph, this chart with the employees on Friday, because I think it's important they understand the presentation I'm going to make to you before. I mean, I think that's fair. So I shared this to them and did a narrative that's in an email that's similar to what I'm saying now. And I had an employee reach back to me and say that they appreciate this discussion. And as an example, they were saying they have a student that is in a first-year senior that isn't going to complete the program, and they want that individual to continue on, but they aren't sure where to take them because they're not going to be high school next year because they're going to graduate high school, but they're not yet adult education, and so the adult ed isn't necessarily processing them. And they said it becomes this cluster where if we're responsible for the academics of all of our learners, then it's a real clear line of where you go as a student or where you go as an employee to find a resource to help our students. So in our academics, you see that it is a chief academic officer that oversees all of the academics, high school and adult. And we break that out into the different clusters. And then those individuals responsible for those different clusters are responsible for the high school and adult programming, academic programming for those clusters. The curriculum development, the pacing guide, the scope and sequence, the assessment, the assurance on the high school side that we're excelling at the TSA, the assurance on the high school and adult ed side that we're excelling in the industry certification, that they work with you'll see in a second, over on the operational side, that those individuals that are completing our programs are placed, whether it's into a post-secondary learning opportunity or whether it's straight into the workforce. They begin taking over a portion of the evaluations of the staff, the professional development of the staff, the new curriculums of the staff, the student achievement data of the staff. That becomes the kind of the wheelhouse for all our curricular and instructional aspects within the organization for all our teachers, not just high school, not just adult, but all. And that is a hugely significant shift for us because that isn't how we operationalize right now. I met with adult cosmetology last week, and one of the challenges they had is that there isn't that continuity. Mm-hmm. They're kind of just set off aside and kind of figuring it out. They're doing a great job, but it shouldn't be that way. It should be that our cosmetology program, whether you're a high school learner or an adult learner, is treated the same, is processed the same, is measured the same, is professional developed the same. And it just isn't that way right now, not because people are being, just the structure doesn't afford that. So my recommendation is that we have a chief financial officer, a chief academic officer who is responsible for overseeing all of the academics, a chief operational officer. The chief operational officer is an individual that is responsible for the day in, day out operations of that campus or those campuses. So, if I'm the chief operational officer, my job is to make sure that I'm working on having the appropriate staffing according to the board approved student teacher ratio. that if there's a concern about a program that may need an additional aid, that I'm the individual that's helping to navigate that so that operationally it works efficiently on my campus, that the special education that we partner with is working with our sending districts to make sure that we're getting the IEPs, that if there's an issue with the student achievement, that I go to the chief academic officer and I say, even though you're responsible for the academics, this is my campus, and the expectation is that we improve outcomes, whether it's the TSA, the industry certification, and so I'm monitoring that as well, so I can have conversation with the academic officer. The operations officer would oversee the admissions department. Our admissions department is another area that is a real challenge for us, not because folks aren't working their tails off. They are. In fact, they're probably, in many cases, being asked to do too much. But we need to have an admissions department that focuses all of its energy on all of our students. We need to have a counseling department that focuses all of its energy on all of our students. We need a placement department that focuses all of its energy on all of our students. We need a marketing department that focuses all of its energy on all of our students. And that is a huge shift from where we're at right now. So the operational officer would make sure that he or she would make sure that those components are in alignment with the direction the governing board has established in consultation with the superintendent. And then the last position would be the public information officer. I think there's a big difference between a public information officer and marketing. I think public information officer tells our story, and it tells our story almost on a daily basis. The marketing takes our story and, by definition, markets it to sell it to a certain group based on certain tendencies that will be different for high school than adult, that will be different for one program versus the other, that will be different based on the analytics that CC talked about. And so I would move the PIO into a separate position, and then I would keep marketing in the admissions office. This may not seem like a big shift, but it is a big shift. It's a big shift for us organizationally, but what it does do is it positions us, in my opinion, to be far more effective, far more efficient, far more capable of scaling the organization up, not only in numbers, but also in outcome expectation. You'll see later on in our agenda, there's 2 job descriptions that I'm asking the governing board to approve tonight. One is the chief academic officer, and the other is the admissions director. It's my belief that we can't grow all of this out until we first grow the academic side out. That comes first. So my hope would be that we could hire a chief academic officer sooner rather than later, and he or she comes on board and begins building out what the rest of that side of the organization, that silo in the organization looks like. I would also ask that we hire a director of admissions that would fall underneath the operational department, but the marketing, the recruitment, the registration, the career services, those are pieces that we have got to get aligned and can't wait till 22-23. We need them now. The reason why I don't believe that don't need to at this point in time hire the chief operation officer is because I don't think the roles and responsibilities will change significantly in that area for 21 and 22. Where they will significantly change is 22-23, and then at that point in time, we would post and hire the chief operation officer position, so that the goal would be that by the time we start school year 22-23, this is the organizational structure. We begin the process by hiring a chief academic officer for 21-22 to build out the academic side. We also hire an admissions director to begin building out the admissions side. When the chief academic officer has built out the academic side, we'll then turn our attention to the operational side, in which we'll fill that position for 22-23, so that beginning that school year, then we're functioning the way that this organizational chart kind of requires. I said a lot of words, and I hope maybe I should have maybe it was good if I confused everybody, but I'd be happy to answer questions or concerns about what I just said.
Can you tell me which employees were circulated this plan?
Everybody.
Was it all employees?
Everybody. I sent it out as a group email. Yeah.
Okay. Was there any negative feedback? Because I'd like to also, we heard some of the positive, but I would like to poke holes in this. Was there any?
So I think some
Any
of the
concerns?
negative, yes. I think some of the negative is the uncertainty of what it means, right? Because it is change, and I think that that's a fair reality. I think some of the negative feedback was, so what does this actually mean for me, whoever me happens to be? What I said in my communication is that for the vast majority of staff, given that what I just laid out, 21-22, meaning next school year, there isn't going to be a huge change. It would be 22-23, but between now and then, when we build out the academics, when we build out the chief operation officer's position, they will better understand how that will impact them. And whether they think that's a good thing or a bad thing is still to be determined, but at least there's time then for them to make a decision whether this is the organization they choose to be a part of with this structure that we're hoping to have by 22-23. I think that for the most part, I had individuals communicate that they believe that the structure the organization had been functioning under could not scale, both in size or in success, because it was disjointed and disconnected. And it would be difficult for us to be able to say, let's bring adult education to the Power Campus, which we should, because that's an underused asset that we're not servicing our communities in. But in order to do that, we have to have the systems in place that allow us to make sure our accreditation, to make sure our scope and sequence, to make sure the bodies that have to accredit us to do that we're meeting their requirements. We didn't have the systems to do that. So even just the notion of let's expand adult education to the Power Road campus, I don't think we're capable of doing right now. And if we did, it'd be through hook and crook. Not because the people aren't working hard, it's because we don't have the systems in place to make that a reality.
I have a question on when we talk about adult education, and pardon my ignorance on some of this stuff, but we have our typically juniors and seniors in high school that are going to this program, and sometimes seniors are first-year students, right? And so all of a sudden they have no place else to go unless they go into this adult program that's not really connected in any way. And I'm assuming that one of the maybe the hurdles that the student doesn't necessarily see, all of it, is probably how it's funded, right? It's funded, the adult education portion is funded differently than the high school student portion, is that correct?
Short answer is yes. The example you gave, though, in which we have a senior that didn't complete their program and they're staying here the second year, that currently is funded through a grant that the governor's office has. So the student doesn't pay tuition, but to your point, typically an adult student that comes on our campus that pays a tuition.
Gotcha, okay.
Right, and there are some nuances in this, right? I mean, the tuition that we have for adult education obviously isn't the same for high school. So within the organization, there's still going to be some nuances. The challenge with it becomes that we should have in our admissions department the ability to navigate the generalness of enrollment, and then feed out the specifics that are unique, like financial aid as an example.
Yeah, we need to get rid of some silos that are there to help facilitate our learners, whether they're adult necessarily or just ongoing, continued, whatever.
And I want to make sure, when I say this, what I think is interesting is that, when I say that in the academic side, that the individuals that are over there, they're responsible for the academics. They're responsible for the curriculum. They're responsible for the instructional practices. They're responsible for developing the professional development. But even though it looks siloed, they're actually in need of the rest of the areas, right? So if I'm on the academic side, and I'm charged with making sure that we're producing an outcome that is matching the organization's expectation, I'm going to go over to the chief operation officer and say, hey, we need to partner and figure out a way that we can do professional development in a manner that's usable and friendly to the staff. And that's not, I'll deliver the professional development, but I need you, the chief operation officer, to orchestrate and arrange what that actually is going to look like on your campuses. So, in some ways, this is creating what appears to be a more siloed system, but in other ways, it's actually far more interconnected and interrelated than what we currently exist.
No, I understand, and so that'll be, your challenge will be to make sure the silos aren't built.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
The
the
silos
start
can't
is
be built.
to tear them down.
And I think one of the things that will help prevent them from being built is just the very fact that if we say your role and responsibility, whatever it is on here, is you're responsible for all students. As a superintendent, I'm responsible for the adult students and the high school students. That's my responsibility. All students. Well, that begins to break those silos down, but then we begin to have a conversation that says, in order for me to be successful as a superintendent, I have to have a chief academic officer I can rely on. I have to have a chief operations officer. So instead of so you break the silos down, but I think you also begin developing collegiality and partnerships in ways that currently don't exist either. Because right now, honestly, and I think we're breaking some of it, but there is a culture in the organization, or was a culture in the organization, that said, in order for me to get better, you got to get worse. That's how I get better, is if you get worse. And I think that is a failed system. And what this does is it says, in order for us to get better, we all have to get better, because we're all responsible for all kids.
Can I put someone on the spot without getting hurt?
Oh my gosh.
I know, but Stephanie, do you mind? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm so sorry. But I just, before we move forward, I just want to make sure we're hearing from, I just have some hard questions. Sorry. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you currently kind of bounce between both sides of the house.
Currently, no. Currently, I'm working on accreditation for adult ed.
Okay, prior, you were bouncing.
Prior, I was, yeah.
So when you were shown this plan, what were your thoughts?
I love it. I love the plan. I know one of the areas too that I would like to be high on the list is the chief financial officer too, in addition to the academic officer and the director of admissions. Those I think are the most important, the soonest.
So I know that you interact with the teachers. Do they feel siloed from high school to adult?
Siloed or segregated, either way, yeah.
Okay. That's basically my question.
I think this would resolve it.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I just wanted to, you're the only one here. She'll never come again because of that.
Thank you. You just ruined it for all of us. Are there other questions, concerns?
Okay, I'm an employee of EVIT right now.
Yep,
I can apply for any of these jobs.
absolutely.
Okay, so you can fill within or without, outsource, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, my goal is to get the best individual. And if we have the best individual currently employed here, that's who I would recommend. If we have an individual that is better, that isn't employed here, that's who I would recommend. And in my mind, and again, none of us are going to be here forever. What I want to create is a system that when I leave, you leave, sustains itself. And I think this begins leaning into that. And I think if we set the expectation that we're going to make it a fair process, and I hope it's internal, but there may be some situations where it's external, and that's because it's the best candidate.
I would like to weigh in on that point, though. Too many times particularly in educational organizations, when you go to fill one of these higher level, everybody thinks you got to do these nationwide, worldwide searches and bring in the new talent and then all the new blood and all that. And I just think that's, faulty thinking. And I'm in favor of as much as possible to grow from within. Occasionally you're going to bring in somebody, but not just at the exclusion of people we already have that are perfectly capable of doing the job and developing and growing into that.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, and we're uniquely different, and sometimes that's a curse, but sometimes it's a blessing. We're one of the only institutions that will have both high school and adult learners that we're responsible for. And so, where will we find personnel that knows both? Well, most likely from inside, right? But and I'm not going to do a national search and things like that. I think, like you, I don't think that's necessary. But I do think there's value in saying that I want us to be as fair, but if there's somebody that's better than somebody internal, if there's an external better than internal, then I believe it's not only fair, but I think it's the right decision to bring that person in. But to your point, I would like to think that internally, our folks have a leg up because they've lived both sides of the house, even or kind of like, right? But I just don't want to say I'm going to fill it internally or externally. I think it's fair to say that we're going to let the best applicant be recommended for the job.
I'd like to add, I think it's incumbent on us to hire the best of the best. And hopefully it's people that are within, and frequently it is. But if the best of the best is not already
Is your mic
here-
on?
Is my mic on?
Yes.
Yes. So if the best of the best aren't currently here, then we need to find the best of the best. Hopefully somebody from Arizona, because that is the best of the best.
I agree.
Right.
Any other questions or concerns? I will bring then, we will continue to build this out, and I will bring and share, a deeper dive on these. Because, like I said, when you begin seeing how this rolls itself out, it's pretty interesting. So I'll keep you updated on where we're at in the process, as I'll keep the faculty and staff updated on where we're at in the process. So unless there are any other questions for me, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 9A, approval of the job description for the Chief Academic Officer. Do I have a motion?
I would motion to combine A and B, 9A and B, as one motion.
I have no problem with that. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. A and B combined.
Mr. Lane?
I didn't hear. Do we have a second on the combining of the two?
We do.
We do.
Okay.
We do. Is
Is
Mr.
there any-
Lane?
Is there any discussion?
Can I say something, Mr. President?
You bet.
Thank you. So one of the, I told you it's a blessing and a curse being us. One of the things that is difficult for us in some situations is finding a salary scale structure schedule that matches what we do, right? Because, the positions that we're talking about are servicing, high school and adult. So, do we look at a traditional K-12 system and say, well, the chief academic officer is really an assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum and instruction? Well, that's not really what he or she is, because it's not just curriculum instruction on the K-12 side, but it's also curriculum instruction on the post-secondary side, which carries with it also some need and a need to understand post-secondary requirements. So what we did is we did a search and compared both the traditional K-12 academic assistant superintendent as well as post-secondary organizations for academics to get a starting salary. The position, the chief academic officer position, is, you'll see, is a master's plus 5 years as the requirement. That settles us in a starting salary for that individual in about the 160s. And of course, he or she may get more depending upon what their experience is. But I wanted you to understand that because, again, if we go post the position and we get, somebody internally or somebody externally that has the requirements and our salary guideline says this is where they're going to settle, I don't want you to not have been aware that's, for a 12-month contract, that's kind of where the starting gap is. The director of admissions is about, I want to say, mid-80s for a 12-month position, which is commensurate to similar positions. So anyway, I just, it's not on the job description that you're approving, but I didn't want you not to be aware of that before you made the decision or not to approve the jobs.
Is there any further discussion?
Of course. On the working environment, I just have a quick question, and it might just be standard contract language. it talks about the employee hired for the position will work a basic 40-hour work week. Usually at that CAO level, I'm going to be honest with you, it's like an 80-hour a
80-hour.
week.
It's an exempt.
It's
an
totally
exempt position.
exempt. I'm just wondering why we,
Yeah.
I don't want someone who's looking for this job to think it's a 40-hour a week.
Can we
I'm
pull that
just,
out, do you know?
I mean,
Can we pull that out, do you know?
can we just write, will be salaried exempt or something?
Yeah.
I just worry it might give the illusion
No, that's
someone
fine.
thinks they're applying for something
that-
that's
that-
not realistic.
True. The contract itself, it will be an exempt contract,
Right.
right? So that the nature of it, but on the posting, we can wordsmith it to reflect that it's much more than 40 hours a week, even though it's an exempt.
Right, I would think that, pardon me, the candidates applying for it, if they expect it to be, if they expect it to be a 40-hour job, they're probably not gonna clear the
Understand that.
the interview process, but it's an exempt job, and that's, 24/7s, right, Superintendent?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, but we can look to wordsmith some of that.
We all know it's 24/7 because we bug you
Yeah, exactly.
and you answer the phone.
I was gonna say, text, emails, calls. I'm not complaining, I'm grateful.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Watkins.
Aye.
I don't want to
He said
forget him.
first.
I do not want to forget him. Lane.
Aye.
Covington.
Aye.
Doolin.
Aye.
Cleedum.
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Motion carried. That brings us to item 9C, revision of the budget for 2021. Do I have a motion?
Don't need,
Is it a motion item?
Yes.
Yeah, then discussion.
I better look, hold on. I got two.
Would you repeat the motion? I couldn't tell what you said.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything, so that's probably really good. Motion to approve and adopt the revised budget for fiscal year
I'll
2021.
second it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Edith. As usual, it's very good, thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll ask Ms. Boggs then to call for the vote.
Watkins.
Aye.
Lane.
Aye.
Covington.
aye.
Doolin.
Aye.
Cleedum.
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Motion carried. That brings us to 9D, a request for the no objection letter. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we authorize Dr. Wilson to enter to a no objection, or author and sign a no objection agreement for the FTZ in question.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Boggs to call for the vote.
Watkins.
Aye.
Lane.
Aye.
Covington.
Aye.
Doolin.
Aye.
Cleedum.
Aye.
Boggs is an aye, and Hart.
Aye.
Motion carried. That brings us to item 10, staff reports. Now call on Dr. Wilson.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, just quickly as a reminder, we're heading down the final stretch. Our last day of school is a week from Wednesday. We have our completion ceremonies Monday and Tuesday night. The Power Campus completion ceremony is Monday night. Ms. Boggs will join us on the stage for that ceremony. And then the main campus is Tuesday night. Mr. Hart will join us on the stage for that ceremony. We have a VIP room for all of the other board members. If you're interested, to bring yourself, your guests, if you'd like. We're going to extend an invitation to the CTE directors and the sending district superintendents to come if they'd like to. Whether they do or not, I know it's a busy time of the year, so they may not, but we'll extend that invitation. We're really fortunate in that, first of all, I'm really excited that we have a completion ceremony, just to be honest. We also are really fortunate that we have a guest speaker this year. I think that will be truly an impactful time for our students. Mr. Mike Broomhead And if you have listened to Mr. Broomhead, his story is a unique story. It's a story that I think our students will be able to connect with and relate to. So he'll be our guest speaker both on Monday and Tuesday night. If you are interested in being in the VIP room and haven't let Tammy know, please let her know so she can make sure that we tell the Cubs who will be there, and we can have food for you and drinks, which would be soda, water, drinks.
Can we
But we're
bring
looking
our own
forward to it.
flask?
And then our last day with employees is Thursday next week, and then we go into the summer recess. So that's it.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, closing items. We'll do 11B first. Does any board member have a topic for the June 14 meeting?
Yeah, I
Hearing
do.
none. Okay.
I would like to understand accounts payable vouchers better. I would like an explanation of what all goes into M&O and all the other ones that you do. Okay.
Dr. Wilson, can you see to that?
Absolutely. And as a reminder, month of June is going to be heavy loaded with the construction. So we'll have both meetings. We'll have McCarthy and our architects here as well.
Thank you. Any other additions to the June 14 meeting? Hearing none, I'll consider adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Mr. Lane?
A second.
Hart?
Any discussion? Ms. Boggs, will you call for the vote?
Watkins,
Hey,
Can we
Lane,
just do a consensus?
we could do a roll call, or well, just finish. Covington,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Bleedham,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye,
Vote nay.
and Hart. All right, we're out of here.
Motion.
Should have abstained it.
We should have abstained and stayed here all night.
motion carried. Meeting is adjourned.